I'm Bharat Mehra, Associate Professor, School of Information Sciences, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the College of Communication and Information's Diversity and Inclusion Week. And of course, I think you had a chance to get privy to some really insightful, intense discussions on diversity and inclusion and how that impacts our life in various ways. We've had a kind of a packet for you in terms of different aspects of diversity, in terms of the cultural sphere, the big orange sphere, and today we have the second panel on the public sphere. And so, for that we have our panelists related with diversity and inclusion and politics. So different aspects of politics are going to be shared. People coming in from different vantage points and different perspectives, and how that has shaped their life and their work. And so my co-moderator is going to introduce you and introduce herself and share the ground rules.
Hello, I'm Maureen Keller. I direct the School of Advertising and Public Relations, and we are so happy to have all of you here. It is a wonderful opportunity during an election year to raise this topic and to listen to people who have great experience on this topic in politics. At the end, we will have questions, and one of the ones that I want to talk about is that we'll just have civility and respect. We can agree to disagree, and this is actually an opportunity to show that university students are the future of our country, and that we can disagree and we can talk about political issues without yelling or screaming or anything else. It's my pleasure to introduce the panelists. Each one of them has an excellent history of participating in either local or political topics. And they're going to introduce themselves, their affiliation, their experiences, and a little bit about their political background. Why don't we start just by giving them a hand and welcoming them to campus. Bryce, why don't you start? The person who sits here always goes first.
My name is Dean Rice, and I'm a Chief of Staff to Knox County Mayor Tim Burchett, and have been since he went into office 6 years ago. Prior to that, I had a private consulting firm. My background began in politics with when Fred Thompson first ran for the Senate in 1994. After his victory, I went to work for him in both Knoxville and in Washington, dealing with energy issues, and then left him, worked for Elizabeth Dole in her presidential campaign, ran her Southeast campaign unsuccessfully, of course, but then I went to work for Congressman Jimmy Duncan, that brought me back to Knoxville, from where I began consulting, and have left that to run Fred Thompson's campaign in South Carolina when he unsuccessfully ran for the Republican primary in 2008. So I've sort of wandered between the policy side and the political side, and now wandered from Washington back to Knox County, and I'm happy. And my wife is here, Natalie, and our friend from Belarus is visiting to have real inclusion. We've included Minsk today with Anna.
So I'm Ren Dupes. By day, I work in alumni affairs at the College of Law right here on campus. By night, I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Knoxville and Knox County. How many people have heard of the League of Women Voters? Cool, okay. Some people. So the League is, Corey is actually a member of the League of Women Voters, I'm just going to say. So the League really came out of the women's suffrage movement, and we're a nonpartisan organization. So my experience is going to be a little bit different than the mayor's or dean's, in that I have most of my adult life worked with an organization that doesn't support or oppose candidates. We just are about informing voters. And so we'll talk more about that a little later, I'm sure. But we came out of the suffrage movement, like I said, which was almost 100 years ago. And does anybody know what might have happened around then? Women got the right to vote, finally. So we believe in exercising that right, men and women. So that is what the League is all about. I'm
Casey Williams, what I go by Kari Williams Cockfield, and I'm the director of the Public Library in Blount County. Have any of you been to the Blount County Library? You know, we have it's a very different kind of public library. It's about 90,000 square feet, and we provide probably 2,500 to 3,000 programs a year, most of them being for adults. So we're very involved in workforce development, entrepreneurship, and social justice. My background, I've been a public library director for close to 30 years, different types of public libraries. I was the public library director in Sevier County, Then I was the public library director in the Cayman Islands, and then I came back and and I'm now the public library director here. So there is no part of my life that is not impacted by politics of one type or another. Public libraries fall under the state, the Secretary of State's office. We get federal money, so we have to meet federal guidelines, and we have to have very good relationships with local and state government officials. In my particular situation, I have a very complex funding system. I am funded by the county as well as 2 cities, and then I have to raise a portion of it myself. I have my own revenue stream. So I not only have a commission, but I have 2 city councils. I have a library board, a foundation board, and a Friends, which is 1,000 members strong. So I work for everybody all the time. And so I find myself being in the role of mediator, amplifier, walking that line of good relationship building without promoting one agenda or another agenda.
Good afternoon. I'm Daniel Brown, and I'm a city councilman here in Knoxville, Tennessee. First of all, let me thank the College of Communication for inviting me to participate on this distinguished panel. And in 2011, I was serving on council, and then Mayor Haslam was elected governor. And so the council had to elect one of its own to serve as mayor, and that turned out to be me. And that was a wonderful time because it became a historical thing, serving as the first and only African-American mayor of the city for 1 year. Prior to running for city council, I was active in government and politics by working as an election official for Knox County elections, and also some partisan political affiliations, serving as a ward chair for the Democratic Party in the 12th Ward. That number won't mean anything to you. But anyway, before running for office, I worked for the United States Postal Service. So it lets you know that ordinary people can run for office and win. And we need people to run for office, good people to run. And I think a lot of times people are turned off from the political system and think it's corrupt and everybody is a bad person. But we need good, honest people, many of you who are sitting here, to offer yourselves to run on a local or even a statewide or regional level. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your brief introductions. I'll start. We are going to alternate between us in order to make it more interactive in the posing of the questions. So I'm going to start with, as you can see, we have such a large youngsters in our audience today. So what feedback do you have, what advice do you have for them in terms of how they can get involved with the democratic process? And there are a few prompts that I have. I'm going to share them with you before so that you can respond to those too. What do you have to say to a large part of the public who say, my vote is not going to count, it won't count? And why? How can they, and they say, what's the point of me contributing and voting when the decisions are already made and the structure of the politics has worked out, is my voice going to count at all? And also, what do you say about recent trends that we've seen in terms of such low numbers of younger population contributing and voting? So I'll start off with the first person and then we can come.
Okay, sure. Very good questions, and I teach a class here in the College of Communications and talking about political communication, campaign, and the issue comes up very often as far as why get involved, why do this? Because that's your job. I mean, we're citizens of a great country, and part of that citizenry is to be involved. On either side of the spectrum. My background is primarily Republican. Mayor Brown's is primarily Democrat. I think the world of Mayor Brown. He's one of the finest people I know, and I would support him. And we get caught up in the letters after the names and sort of lose sight, and that's when we become cynical. And as I pull back from that, and just realize that you have an opportunity to do something that most people in this world don't have to do, and that is to be engaged in a meaningful way And keep in mind that a voice that's assumed is a voice that's not heard. If you assume this population or this community will vote a certain way, they're no longer heard, because they're either, one side's gonna say we've got them, the other side's gonna say we can't get them. And so neither side has to listen. So you have to be ready to move and to be engaged and to recognize the importance of what we're talking about in terms of this is a great nation, be a part of it.
So, first of all, how many people in here are registered to vote? That's step one. Awesome, okay. If you're not, I would encourage you to go to Voterpalooza tonight at the Baker Center and get registered as soon as possible. That is number one on being involved in the democratic process. And for those people in this room, I would say you guys have some unique skills in that you're going to be able to filter information better than a lot of people will when you're watching debates, when you're watching political ads. I mean, I feel like having a communications degree really changes the way you view things. So you can do that and you can help other people do that. I think that would be a huge way you're contributing. But actually doing something, I actually am a graduate with my master's degree here in communication and information, and my final project was on how likely people are, what affects people when they're in the voting booth, what gets them to not vote R or D, like Dean was just talking about. And so what I found was that people who actually get up off the couch and do something are the people, which maybe seems a little counterintuitive, but those are the people who don't just vote R and D. And I think that's because those are the people that are most invested. Even if they're doing something partisan, they're invested and they know what's going on. I started with the League by being newsletter editor back after I got my English degree. So I would say figure out a group that makes you feel passion and start by doing something small. And as far as your vote not counting, absolutely not true. If you pay attention to politics here, the first time Mayor Ruggiero was elected, she almost skipped the general election. There were like 20 votes, and if she had gotten 20 more, it would have just been the primary, and then she would have been the mayor. And whether you are for Mayor Ruggiero or against her, that's a pretty powerful thing. So your vote does matter. And if we remember back to the Gore and Bush election, that election was decided by about 537 votes, and that was federal.
Yeah.
So your vote absolutely counts.
How many of you know where to start if you have a problem locally that involves government? Where do you go first? Do you go to the commission meeting and stand up in front of it in the 3 minutes before and say what you think? Is that where you go? No, you start with your representative, right? You start with whoever your person is.
Call my office.
Who is your commissioner? That's where you start. And often your complaint or your issue needs to go through committee. Going to the commission meeting is too late almost. It's a public forum, but it's not going to impact the voting as much as starting behind the scenes. So, how many of you text your friends all the time? And you follow Facebook, right? You can have that same kind of relationship with your people in the government. How many of you do that? Anybody use GoVoteTN or use the League of Women Voters Vote 411 website to look up who your people are? It's great. But you can have that kind of relationship with your elected officials, and they need you to, because believe it or not, they all want to do the very best job they can. Okay, but they are listening to what they hear. So if you're not talking, they're not hearing you. Silence means nothing. And I've never met a politician locally or state that wasn't trying to do the very best job for their constituents. They are working hard. So know what the process is. Know how to interact with your people. Your vote locally counts tremendous, and especially in primaries. You don't vote in a primary, you've already given up your decision, okay? Don't be afraid to tell your government representatives what your perspective is. If you have an issue or a situation and you need help, tell them, but also know enough about it before you go in or before you talk to them that you can listen objectively to what they have to say, because you're one person and they're looking at the big picture. But your vote counts. It's an obligation to yourself, your community, and your family. Y'all are our future. But what happens now in the government arena is going to impact profoundly your lives. So it is time to pay attention and be part of it.
I'll say a couple of things. One, has already been noted many times, the races are very close. And 1 or 2 votes can make a big difference. We had a city council race not too long ago that I think was decided by about 11 or 12 votes. And oftentimes people, and we'll have a big turnout because you got a presidential race coming up, but the local races are very important. When you have a problem, you call me. My wife can testify to that. A lot of calls, constituent calls. But the other point I want to bring out is the historical part of it. Either race or gender. As is pointed out earlier, it hasn't been a long time in the big arch, the big sweep of history that women have been allowed to vote. The same thing with African Americans. And when African Americans just look at the history of the number of people that were beaten, jailed, and even killed just for the right to vote. That alone is enough to make me vote in every election. And I think sometimes we forget our history and forget what people have gone through just for the right to vote. And I think that somewhere along the way, in terms of voter participation, I believe around about Watergate, people began, I guess you all know about Watergate. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, maybe you're too young, maybe you haven't read it. I think people begin to get turned off with the political system. So you have a low voter turnout, which is definitely not good. And so you have early voting, which was an attempt to increase the voter participation. So that's a big problem. How can we get more people to vote, especially in the local elections? That's a problem that's still trying to be solved. And I'll end with those comments.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask one more round of questions, and then we'll open it up to you so you can ask some questions. So it's an election year. A lot of important topics on the agenda. What issues matter most, and can you speak about how diversity is being played out in this year's elections discussions? Start again?
Mayor
Start down
Brown,
there?
go ahead. Come back down this way.
Oh, we'll start on the end.
Are we speaking primarily on the national level about what issues matter most, or local level, or just a combination?
A combination.
Well, that's a very good question. I think right now one of the major issues, which is police and community relations, and who is going to be in charge, quote unquote, to deal with those kind of issues. We also have major issues with education, health care, and jobs. And those are some of the main issues that we are going to be dealing with. What was the second part of your question?
About diversity?
Oh, diversity. Yes, yes. Definitely need to think about diversity. Right now, I'm the only African American on the city council out of 9 people. The county commission has 11 people, 1 African American. In our state delegation, well, right now we don't have anybody because the person representing had to step down, but we definitely need more inclusion. Also on the city council, we only have 1 female. When I first was elected, we had 2. So I think that does not bode well. We need more people to run. I would like to see more Hispanics, Native Americans, females, and African Americans participate more fully in the electoral process to reflect our overall population and our demographics. So I would encourage people to offer themselves to run and participate in the process. And I'll tell you, then, city council is nonpartisan. So you're really not running as a Republican or Democrat. I think county commission is partisan. I don't think I know, but I would encourage people, if you are interested in the governing process, you should get involved yourself. You may not want to run for office, but you certainly can be involved. The League of Women Voters is one good place to participate, and other organizations. So I'll close my part with that.
Okay, I'm going to start with the diversity part. On the federal level or the national level, diversity is playing a big role, isn't it? We've got our first female candidate, and there was an article that was being shared around Facebook today about all of the roadblocks and stumbling blocks that our female candidate has to overcome in the public eye. It's not just the fact that she's a woman. It's a lot more than that because of our own cultural mores in the United States. And also then we've got the issues that are coming to play with the narrative in our federal election process with intolerance and finger pointing and people just not playing well together to get things done. So diversity is all around us, and it's very difficult to keep up with what the actual facts are versus what the fiction is. Our issues, I think both on the federal level, the most important thing as a woman is Supreme Court justice appointments, because I like having the rights to my body, and I don't want to see some of my civil liberties go away. And the potential is there. Renewable energy, environmental sustainability, services and support for the homeless and indigent community, including public transportation, food and shelter, and opportunities for them to change their living conditions. We have a very big issue with drugs and homelessness here. It's big. Guns and drugs, which are kind of interconnected, right? Affordable health care, and then beyond that, international relationships. We have some work to do on building our international relationships, so kind of a short and sweet.
I think all of that is true, but I'll tell you the main things that I look at when I'm figuring out who to vote for. I look for civility, so I think that's incredibly important. How are you going to work with other people? How are you going to get, because you can't get stuff done if you can't work with other people. I also look at either knowledgeability or how likely they are to listen to other people, because nobody is going to know everything. I mean, if we had a candidate who knew everything, they would probably have some serious lack of social skills going on, right? That's probably not who we want leading our country. So I think the more important skill is that they're willing to listen to experts. As far as diversity goes, diversity is something we talk about in the league a lot. Does anybody want to guess what the average league member looks like across the country? It's a 70-year-old white lady.
Absolutely. I think we might be the youngest.
So, and I actually have one of my league board members in here if he would like to stand up, perhaps.
Stand up.
He refuses to stand up. It's not the only time he's disobeyed me recently. So we talk about it all the time, because what we feel like is if we have a more diverse board, then we're probably getting a more diverse range of perspectives, and we're probably better able to represent our community. And isn't that what we really want people who we elect to office to do, is to represent us? I think around election time, there's a lot of false inclusivity, right? No, we have your best interests from both parties. And, you know, like I said, it's false, you know, because so much of the time what we hear is us versus them. So I think what we have to do is try to look past that, you know, try to figure out what we have common ground, because the us versus them stuff, it's not true. You know, I mean, you can see that on this panel today. It's not true. You know, especially at the local level, people have to work together all the time. Mr. Rice and I were just talking about that before we got started. I mean, here at the local level, I mean, that's just how it works. There's no choice. People aren't going to stand for that. So, you know, be informed. Don't be fooled by the hype. And I think that's the best you can do.
Look, I would agree with everything that's been said, and that on that last point, widening Ebenezer at this intersection or that intersection is not a partisan issue. Whether or not you have a dog park on this end of the county or that is not a partisan issue. So you're absolutely right. It's not at the local level, but Senator Baker, Howard Baker, of the Baker Center, has said one time that the rubber meets the road at the local level, and that if you want to make a difference in your community, you run for school board. And this is somebody who was Chief of Staff to President Reagan, and was Majority Leader of the United States Senate, and he understood that the local level is where the action takes place that you and I feel every day. But pulling back, talking about the national picture right now, how many people have ever seen an election cycle anywhere close to what we're experiencing now? I never have. It's insane. And I think that it points to, talk about the issues, I think frustration. The American voters on both sides are frustrated. Now, what they're frustrated about may differ. They may be frustrated with the jobs, or they may be frustrated with the safety, but there's a true frustration that's out there, and a lack of sense of being heard, a lack of nobody, doesn't matter what we do, it doesn't matter what we say, nothing's going to change. And that's a guaranteed way for nothing to change. And as I said it earlier, and we see traditionally of recent history, then the, let's say, pick a minority community, the African American community has trended Democratic in terms of their votes. And to the point that the Republican side feels like, well, nothing we say is going to get us those votes. And the Democratic side, though, feels like, well, we've got those votes. Well, okay. Does that mean the African American community is being heard as well as it should be? No, it's not. If you're assumed, a voice that's assumed is a voice that's not heard. You cannot let politicians assume you will either vote for them or vote against them. You have to hold them accountable to represent you and your needs, and not sit back and accept that, well, we're going to go this way or go that way. No. When we talk about tolerance, Congressman John Lewis, who is a great civil rights leader, he led a march across a bridge in a little town in Alabama called Selma. And he got beaten, and those people got beaten one Sunday. It's called Bloody Sunday. Look it up. It's a marked change in our history. He didn't march to be tolerated. You tolerate a toothache. You tolerate air conditioning that doesn't work in your van until you get it fixed. No, he wanted to be accepted. And that was driven home to me by a student here at UT. They put it on their Facebook. I don't want to be tolerated, I want to be accepted. And that just hit home to me. We should not demand tolerance, we should demand acceptance. And your voice should not be quiet. Your voice should be loud and say, we're a community that wants a better country. We're frustrated, but we will vote, and we will hold you accountable after Election Day too.
Great, thanks. So now you saw the first bunch of questions were how politics might relate to you as students, how you can get involved. The second bunch of questions you saw were related with at the national level, especially we just witnessed the first presidential debate that took place between the candidates. So let's turn it to you guys and say, do you have any questions for the audience regarding both those sets of questions on that broader level?
Going back to the question of why people don't vote or don't participate, I think a lot of people think that politicians don't listen to them, that there's already an agenda, and they're going to pursue that agenda regardless of what, the individual voter may think about it. And I would like to get your feedback on this, because I really don't believe that's true, especially at the local level. I do think it's true at the national level. I flat out believe that at the national level. At the local level, I don't believe it at all. And I know that because I have called my congressman. I've written them letters. I wrote Zach Wamp a letter back when he was congressman. He published it in the Chattanooga paper. And every time I've ever called my congressman, I was listened to. They may not have agreed with me. If they didn't agree with me, they explained why they didn't agree with me, but they always listened, every time. That's why I like our local congressmen, especially our local congressmen. At the city level, I've never really paid much attention to city politics, but you really got my attention today. And so my question is, how often does the local population, what percent of the local population gives you a call? And what is your experience with speaking to individual voters and listening to their needs and responding to those needs? And, you know, maybe what your experience is overall on that issue.
I'll take that question. And yesterday, I had a call from a gentleman who was concerned about a fine that he received for some property that he owns that's in my district. And he had a fine, I think, of $180 about his yard, or not, the property he owned, not being cut. So he called me as his councilman to see if I could handle that for him. Now, I can't change the laws, but I can try to intercede on his behalf. So the next thing I did was to contact the public servant. Now, this is an example. Now, this was on yesterday. I don't know the status of it today. But you asked about the percentage, and that's a kind of a hard question, but I would say and a lot of people who call me, maybe they don't even vote, but they live or reside in the particular district that I represent. So I try to help each one. I think you mentioned Congressman Duncan. You didn't mention him by name, but I think that's been one of his major things since he's been in office these maybe 35 or 40 years, constituent service. So what I've tried to do myself since I've been in office, if someone calls me, I'm going to try to work on their problem. Now, they may not be happy with the result, but I'm going to make an effort to try to do something for them. So it's a pretty significant amount of people who call their local councilman to get something done, especially if they feel that the city has wronged them in some way. Sometimes it has wronged them and maybe not. Now, I would tell you, in the area that I represent, which is it's not predominantly African American, but a lot of people call and say, well, this would not happen in another part of town. Or this is only happening because I'm African American. So I have to deal with those issues. Sometimes they are justified, sometimes they are not. But a large number of people, they will call not only their councilman, and when I was in the mayor's office, I didn't realize how many people call directly to the mayor's office, and they want something done yesterday. So you try to work on it as best you can and solve their problems if you can.
Can I add something? So I haven't heard feedback on this from city councilors, but I've had county commissioners tell me if they get 10, and this isn't about personal issues, this is about bigger issues that they're voting on. If they get 10 emails, that's huge.
Constitutes an emergency.
So imagine the impact you can have with an email to your representative, to the whole commission, to the whole city council. I mean, and by the way, on both web pages, the emails are very easy to find.
I will add this. If you're emailing your elected official about an issue, leave out the emotion. Thank them for their service, because I can promise you their job is thankless. They hear nothing but the bad stuff all the time, and they work very hard. So be gracious, ask nicely, explain and provide some background, and then thank them.
And don't copy and paste a letter somebody already sent.
I would also add, keep it brief and to the point. Because really, if it's a neighborhood issue, council people will get bombarded with emails and phone calls, and try to read all of them that you can, but keep it to the point.
Maybe just add one quickly, pick up the phone and call. Mayor Burchett will meet with anybody. It may take a week to get in, but he's this, you talk about open door policy. He's at lunch at least twice a week with kids from a different elementary school. He's meeting with union folks. He's meeting with conservatives. Emails are great. They're easy. They're good. Pick up the phone and call and go and look somebody. That he had a person about a month ago complain about something very viscerally, and he said, "Well, call my office. Let's sit down and talk." This was in a public setting. Guess who has not called? This person has never called. It's like you were so angry it was going to change the world, but you didn't call them to follow up. So follow up, pick up the phone, email, call, and go look the person in the eye and say, I want to talk about this.
Maybe we can have another question in the middle for this set of earlier topics that were raised.
I really just wanted to invite responses to the idea of the public library being the foundation for educating our electorate, and it sort of being a paragon or bastion of availability to information, and how the issues of diversity and also public funding for those institutions might weave into your responses to that.
Okay, I'll start with this one. I really feel it is the mission of the public library to make sure that constituents or community members know where to go to get the correct answers, to get the information, or contact information, or facilitate access to elected officials. We provide forums. We provide an opportunity for community forum. In my particular situation now, the library is very active in promoting social justice at a community level, being involved in community outreach. We truly do serve as an amplifier for organizations that work together, United Way, Family Resource Center. We work with the Chamber. We work with Workforce Development and Adult Ed. We are actually very excited. We're having our first program. We are an early voting location in Blount County. We just started that. We're very excited because we're going to be the #1 location this time. Be Informed, Vote Smart, which is a program that we're going to have Monday, October 10th, where we're inviting adults to bring their tech tools, and we're going to help them connect to the election and keeping up with government process. We're very excited about this. We're partnering with the League of Women Voters, the Blount County Elections Commission Office, and Blount United, which is a group that represents minority population in Blount County. So an excellent team, and we're hoping that we can build on this. But I do feel like as the director of a public library, that being embedded in the democratic process for the community is one of our top responsibilities.
Knox County has a library system that's run by a lady, Maureen Keller, who has a tremendous, a lot of the same philosophy there. That it's funded by county dollars, county tax dollars. The mayor's office has funded it to the full extent that it can, and the commission has approved that, and then the library is here in Knox County, is tremendous and does a great job.
Yeah, I'll add, it's here in Knox County, it's one of the few places where you can get free public meeting space, which is awesome. And they are usually booked up for that reason. And I'll also add, we're having a meeting on human trafficking at the Bearded Branch Library tomorrow night at 6 o'clock if anyone would like to attend.
Just as an aside, I have a very good budget. My budget is about $2.4 million, and I have one building. I have a staff of 60, and over 50% of my staff have a master's degree. So because we have that kind of community support, we're able to do what we do. And that library was built by the government entities there. So they're very proud of it, and it is a drawing point for industrial development. It's one of the first places they bring people to tour. We have a coffee shop. We're actually a destination right on the Greenway. It's very beautiful.
I would add one thing is that libraries provide computer services. Oftentimes we think that everybody has a computer, which is not the case, because some people do not have the means to purchase a computer. So the library, you can go to any of the libraries here in Knoxville and use a computer for free, and you get a lot of information there. So I'm a big supporter and a user. I don't get there as often as I used to of the library system, but especially the part about the computers. I feel there are so many people that don't have the means to have them.
It's not so much just the computers either, it's broadband access. I mean, we live in the mountains. I don't care how much money you have. If you live up on the top of a mountain, you're not going to get high-speed internet access. So one of our most successful programs is the hotspot program. We rent them for $2 a day, and we have 50 hotspots, and there's always a waiting list. So that's been very, very good service.
Thank you. We have time for one more set of questions to our panelists, and then we'll go into questions. Is that all right? We're going to ask them one. Now, how many of you, this is your first presidential election that you're going to vote in? Excellent. So let's just ask this question of the panelists. What's the difference between the two political parties in general? In general, they know, I told them ahead of time. And second, how does it relate to diversity, right? So we have a group of people here who are going to be voting for the first time in about a month. And they might have some questions about what it means to be a Democrat, what it means to be a Republican. If you could just do it very concisely and briefly, and then tie it into how each of those political parties discusses and thinks about diversity.
The year was 1867. That's a huge question. And I guess I'm here sort of representing the Republican side, which the Republican side would like to throw rocks at me right now based on a lot of stuff I've written in the New Sentinel over the past year and some radio shows I've been on. So I'm not a good representative of right now this region of the country's Republican Party. And so I would say both parties have good people. Both parties have people that aren't so good. But the point is, wherever you get involved, whichever side you get involved in, because everybody can have a different issue and this and that, be involved for the better. Just push your party. If you're going to be in a party, push it toward the better. You know, I think there's things in the Republican Party that definitely need to be pushed toward the better. And that's why I don't leave. I don't leave the party. I stay there because I think somebody has to be there to push it toward the better. And so that's all I have to say.
It's nice of you to go first again. So I'll just be honest, I've been kind of ruined by being a nonpartisan organization. Of course, I do have a party, but I don't talk about it publicly because the league has to be, like I said before, nonpartisan. When we're organizing a debate, I don't want you thinking about who I'm voting for, who I want to, look better. Because that's not what the league is about at all. We're just about providing information. I will say, I think we all know the stereotypical difference between Republicans and Democrats, right? But I'll tell you, I at one point was not the president of the league, and only the president has to steer clear of all of that stuff, and the voter services chair. So I went to an event for a party, and I've been to events for both parties, and I think you find the same thing on both sides, just different flavors. I mean, everybody is us versus them. I think it's about personal choices, like Dean said, and figuring out kind of where you fall and trying to make the best of it, and not feeding into the red versus blue, elephants versus donkeys stuff, because that gets us absolutely nowhere.
Okay. I grew up in South Mississippi and started off in Young Republicans. I knew the platform, and as I got older, the line moved on me. And so I have found myself on the Democratic side as a woman. Women's rights are very important to me. And I also feel like, it takes a village. Working for 30 years in my career area has spotlighted, how much a community working together can build sustainability. And so those things have led my personal decisions. But as far as the political party differences, how many of you have ever read the platforms for the parties? They publish them. They're online.
There's actually two hands.
Yeah. So and the platform changes, right? It's not the same every time. So you gotta keep up with it. But the Republican Party is more small government, states' rights, you know, and the kind of the focus on that businesses can carry the burden of economic stability. Kind of in a nutshell. Would you say I'm right? It's a little microcosm. It's a little more complex than that. And the Democratic Party is, everybody has an opinion. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're different, but everyone has one. It's respected. It's kind of like herding cats. Very much promote government leadership for ensuring that, you know, our economic resources and our national resources are stable. So a little bit more federal government interference, if you want to call it that, with regulation. What else I can add to that? Very much a supporter of the individual.
Well, I think that's a very deep question.
Yes, it's a hard one.
Try to define the difference between the two major parties. So we have more than these two parties. But I think if you watch the Democratic and the Republican convention, it would appear that the Democratic Party is at this point in time more inclusive of a more wide range of people. Now, the question was asked about how many people are voting for the first time presidential. So I thought about myself. And the first time that I was eligible to vote in a presidential election was 1968. And it was between Richard Nixon and Hubert Humphrey. I voted for Dick Gregory. And I don't know if you all even know about Dick Gregory, but he was running as an independent candidate. And I felt that he, even though I knew he could not win, that he represented my interests better. So I voted for him. However, looking back, Hubert Humphrey lost and it was a close race. So probably should have voted for Humphrey. and I think that just having two parties is really not the best thing. And if we had more than two parties that actually had an opportunity to win, I think it would be good for America if that was broadened out so that you could include more people in it. So I think just two parties, I'm thinking of, I hate to use this as an example, but there was a man by the name of George Wallace who said there's not a dime's worth of difference between the two parties. And I certainly do not agree with that. But I'm going to end by what I stated. If you just look at those two conventions and who was at the conventions, when the camera panned the audience, I'll just stop right there.
I think what we'll do is we'll take some more questions. They gave us lots of food for thought, didn't they? We have somebody in the back who wants to ask a question, and then we'll open it up to all of you.
Yes, thank you. I know that you have voted in Tennessee, as I have, and one of my frustrations when I go to the polls is that sometimes there's only one party running for the office. How can we get more diversity just in the ballots?
Good question.
I think part of it is the perception that a Democratic candidate can't win. I mean, we are predominantly a Republican state. That's the truth. But there have been Democratic candidates who win. So you got to put yourself out there. And on a local level, it's about having that relationship with the community, isn't it? So if you are interested in becoming active civically, it is one of the first things that you can do in your community to build relationships. Anybody know? Volunteer. Volunteer. Whatever your passion is, socially, culturally, become part of mainstreaming your community. build those relationships, and then it won't matter, it doesn't matter what your party affiliation is.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that the 2nd Congressional District of Tennessee, where we are right now, has not had a Democratic member of Congress since the Civil War. So this is a predominantly Republican area, and it's very difficult to navigate because at the end of the day, 50% plus 1 means if you win or you're in a van by the river. So the people that want to run, they run to the Republicans. But if you go down to these ballots, the smaller local issues, that's where a much smaller electorate, it doesn't take as much to win, and you can get those vote out. So you definitely can win at the local level as a Democrat right now, but Tennessee used to be a Democratic state.
Right.
Except for East Tennessee. We had the first Republican statewide with Howard Baker. So things shift. And if you're on the other side of the party, you can wait. Your time will come, but just stay involved.
Well, I would answer your question that voters need an alternative. And if you go to to vote and you only see one alternative, that's not a good choice. And that's back to what I said earlier. I think we need to expand the choices that we give voters. And that's part of why people don't go vote. They don't see somebody running who represents their interests. So I think we have an expansion of our political parties. It would maybe increase a voter turnout.
Other questions?
Can I add?
Oh, please.
Yeah.
So, first of all, there are definitely programs around town here. I know, at least in Knox County, Leadership Knoxville does one once a year. The League has done programs on running for office. If you want to see more people who look like you run for office, run for office. There's this idea people don't think about being what they don't see. So, and I would also say that a great way to increase people running for office would be to increase the amount of civility. I would say there's a lot of people who don't want to run for office because they don't want nasty emails and they don't want to be shamed publicly. And that happens to our leaders a lot, you know. I'm sure these guys have stories. So, yeah, those are the questions.
Other questions?
We have a situation where in every election, most elections now, it seems like it's the least objectionable candidate. So or the voters think they can't find anybody worth voting for. How do we improve that? Part of it, of course, is because people get torn down. If you run for political office, everybody points out totally negative about the other candidate. And so we don't, either you don't want to run, as you suggested, because you don't want to be publicly shamed. But how do we increase the number of candidates that people would be voting for, as opposed to voting against what I don't want, as opposed to what I do want?
If you don't mind, I think one of the major challenges we face as an electorate is we have a mass media that focuses on entertainment and ratings rather than on substance. And that's our fault because their ratings are based on whether we're watching. And you have a situation where people say, well, I don't like negative ads, but guess what moves voters? Negative ads. And so it's a catch-22, but I think if the media focused more on the substance of what's being said, and we got to know these candidates for what they believe in and what their plans are, rather than how bombastic they are, then you would start to see better people. But that requires us, each of us, to say that's what we want to watch. And until so the responsibility is ultimately to us, because mass media is run by advertising dollars, and advertising dollars are led by us. So the direction you see them going is the direction we're sending them. And right now, we're sending them toward a Friday night fight night rather than any kind of deliberative discussion.
Well, I would agree with you, Dean, on that, especially about civility. I think where we're getting now is we're descending down, and ordinary people don't want to participate. They don't want to participate in that level of uncivility. I was watching on TV a couple of months ago, I was watching C-SPAN, and they showed a debate between John Kennedy and Hubert Humphrey in the Democratic primary. They had a moderator, they had panelists, they had people calling in. Both of these men were so civil to each other. And then you fast forward to today, and you got candidates calling each other liars, this and that. So the whole process is just going down, and people don't want to participate in that. So if we could somehow find a way to bring it back up to a civil level, that regardless of your party or your idea, that you can talk to people on a civil plane. I don't base, since I've been in public life, and my office is nonpartisan, I try not to deal with where a person is coming from politically, but I try to respect people as people. And see, we've gotten so far away from that. You have all of these young people here in this audience who may think about running, but when they turn on the TV and see all of this, well, you're a liar, you're this and that, and it's just getting crazy. So it's at our, as a society, it's not good for us. I don't know really how to answer your question other than to say we need to bring up the level of civility in political discourse rather than what we have today. For another quick example, I was watching TV this morning and I saw Howard Dean saying that maybe when Donald Trump was sniffing, he's on cocaine. He's just throwing that out. You know, you don't have any, I don't think he has any basis for it. But that's an example of what Dean just said. It's all becomes just almost entertainment. It's just getting crazier and crazier. So I don't know how you do that.
I think it's education in how to effectively participate in the political process, as you know, from multiple perspectives, from a voter, from someone running for office, someone in office. I think we've kind of lost sight of what the role of government is, and as a public, we've kind of, you know, apathy is the death knell for democracy. So we've kind of gotten apathetic, we don't want to get involved, it's a little messy. And it is, it's messy. I'm not an elected official, but I am I'm a county department head. And so as such, I'm impacted. I mean, I can go to a commission meeting and get called on the carpet publicly, just like anybody else. And it used to just make me break down when I had to, you know, deal with someone who was jumping at me. But I understand, I've taken a different approach after years of experience, that emotion is their emotion, but what, you know, get past that and look at what the substance is. But I think that there's a learning process in that.
I would just say on the local level, people probably just assume it's the worst of two choices, and that's not always true. So definitely education in that area is important. The league puts on voter forums all the time. Other organizations do it as well. This is one of those get up off the couch moments. We also put out voter guides, which is where we have everyone who's running for office has a chance to respond to questions that we have. And we actually put those in libraries a lot, and they're always available online and sometimes even in the News Sentinel. So.
All right, I think that's probably a good place to stop it. Would you please join me in thanking the panelists?
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Alice Worth, the chair of Diversity Inclusion Week. I'd like to thank our wonderful moderator, Dr. Barack Mayer and Dr. Maureen Keller, and our distinguished panel, lending their voices, wisdom, and wanting you to get involved today. Mr. Dean Rice, to the left, okay, Ms. Dukes.
It's Rin.
Okay, Rin, okay, and Ms. Curry William Cockfield, and Mayor Daniel Brown. Again, another round of applause. Our third day, the public sphere. Tonight, I want to invite you to come out at 5:45 to 6:45 to listen to our keynote person. Her name is Aleka Williams. She's from Scripps, and she's basically, we're talking about diversity and leadership, and you soon too will be moving into the workforce. And I think she has a great story. You don't want to miss it. And this is going to be at the McClung Museum, 5:45 to 6:45. You come early, refreshments. And then our culminating activity, where we will try to build community So many times you come here, you come there, you don't get to really talk to your professors. Tomorrow, from 5 to 7, we'll have our dean, the directors, faculty members at our accommodating festival. It's free hamburgers, hot dogs, veggie burgers, henna painting, photo booth, games. Your different programs and clubs will be represented, providing activities, a lot of opportunities to continue this dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, you do have an obligation. Many people have fought to have a vote, women in the 1920s, African Americans prior to that. It is important because of the different issues that are on the table. Do not stay back and not vote. Take this opportunity to get involved, and also think about running. Your presence, your future depends. America depends on you. So thank you very much.
I have